Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the show. In this web series, we will be going behind the ballot to discuss topics related to the upcoming midterm elections. Very, very important elections, of course. We're doing this in partnership with Get Vocal, which, by the way, after the show, guys, Get Vocal will give you a chance to weigh in and discuss this issue with other people. So go to their site, getvocal.com. So today, I am with Canadian political commentator and digital strategist Dan Spearin, and computer security professional and regressive progressive, good friend of the show, Jordan French. Hey guys, welcome to the show. Good to have you.
Hey Jeff, thanks for having me.
I'm indifferent.
You're indifferent, of course you are. All right. Now, hopefully you won't be indifferent to this topic. Today we're going to be talking about the viability of progressive candidates in the upcoming midterm general elections. As I said before, very, very important. So let me start this off by giving a little context here. Now, one of the things that I talk about often is the fact that we hear on the media that progressives can't win. So people that have ideas that are considered to be a left of center, well, they're too far left. Things like Medicare for all, things like universal health care, as I just mentioned, a living wage, free college. That's too far to the left, and therefore it's something the public in America just cannot tolerate. Now, the arguments against some of those programs, they're big government, they're inefficient. Let's talk about healthcare, for example. Single payer would be a government takeover of healthcare. That's the talking point. Again, inefficient. You've got death panels, wait times, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to throw a question here to Dan. Dan, as a Canadian, you have suffered through the single-payer system. So I want to ask you if you think Americans are ready for it, or if they're not ready for it. Give us your experience with Canadian healthcare.
So first off, I do want to say, because you're Americans, I wanted to match Jordan's flag, so I brought a globe with me, and so we'll do props later. Here's the thing about Canadian healthcare that I think the lesson that should be learned from America is, obviously, it's 1,000 times better, and once you have single payer and you get used to it, you can't actually fathom another system really being around. Like, it would be very hard for Canadians to stomach a candidate who said, we're going to drive two-tier. That's what they've tried a few times in different provinces, but it's almost next to impossible to say we're going to go to private insurance in Canada. Like, that just wouldn't fly. And the reason is, I was doing a show on CYT Network. I got sick one time in the middle of a show, just before we started, actually. I ended up going to the hospital, and there was a mix-up with my health card. When you go to the hospital in Canada, you just show your health card, and that's it. The rest is you go to the doctor does whatever. If they fix your broken leg, they can do whatever your malady is, and that's it. You don't fill out any paperwork. There's nothing to it. For whatever, though, there was a health card mix-up that I had, and what happened is I ended up with a bill because I hadn't renewed my health card because there was a mailing mix-up, obviously, and I had never seen a bill. And I was just like, what is this? It was shocking. It was just like, I couldn't believe how much it was. And I panicked. I was like, I can't pay this. And they're like, oh, you don't have to. You just have to show that you got a new health card and it'll all be done. And it took like 3 seconds, and that was that. And my point is, yeah, so like in America, like, you guys stress so much about it, and it's constantly on your mind. And that's where I think what the strategy really has to be is, Obamacare was correct. There was a lot of problems, but you have to slowly give people a taste of something, and then they'll start to realize, oh, wait, we want this. And we saw this with rallies and what have you, right? It's really, really important to, in my opinion, get anything passed that you can, because the more people are exposed to Medicare for all, or that concept, the more that they'll obviously like it and realize, oh, I'm not being bankrupted by taxes, et cetera, et cetera.
So here's how different that is in America. So basically what happened there is you were out of coverage at the time, and so you got sent a bill, and then you went back after the fact and got your coverage fixed, and it covered that. Here in America, so we have these, health savings accounts where a certain portion of your paycheck every week automatically goes into a health account. And the only advantage to that is it's tax-free, and it forces you to put money into a health account. With the exception of the tax-free part, there's literally no benefit to that. other than just putting money in an envelope every month, and saying it's for healthcare. But in America, we had to I've recently switched jobs, and anytime you switch jobs in America, you're out of healthcare for about a month because your old employer, since your healthcare is all through your employer, your healthcare falls off with the old employer, and you have to do all the paperwork and stuff and get healthcare at your new employer. And so during that month, we had some medical stuff come up, and so I didn't have insurance at the time, right? So we would have to pay out of pocket. And so we got some bills at a doctor's office, and I can't even use my health savings account to pay those off because that health savings account is only associated with charges to my new insurance. So even though it's my money that I have put aside for health costs, I can't pay off old bills that were happened under a different health insurer. Whereas you were out of coverage, and all you had to do was get back in coverage, and it's taken care of. That's amazing.
All right. So going back to what Dan was saying. So, okay. Would you say then that people actually really enjoy that healthcare system that you have in Canada?
Yeah, 100%. But to be really fair to you guys, like when it was started to really take momentum in the late 50s and in the early 60s when we passed it, it was done in started in Saskatchewan, and doctors went on strike, and there was huge fights like you're having now. And it's not until people get it that they realize what they were missing and how much less stress life is, and that you no longer have to worry, like, if I get sick, I will be bankrupted, and what will I do with my life, and how will I take care of my kids? It's just something that now my generation, like millennials, don't even understand. Nobody, like even Gen Xers, don't understand what it was like without it. And now you would never want to get rid of it. Like it's a political landmine in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, Medicare is the same way, right? Like there's no old people in the country saying, stop giving me Medicare, I want to go pay for private insurance. Like it's, we don't have to look to other countries for these examples. They're in America on all these issues. There's an example because that's the one fallback is, yeah, maybe it works in those places, but our culture's different. And then every time there's an example here of it working on a very specific scale. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, Donald Trump also said something about they're rating Medicare to pay for socialism. I thought that was pretty funny. But moving on, since we don't have a lot of time. One more question here, quick for Dan. So you talked about how it was implemented, the Canadian system in the 50s, 60s. What happened to the politicians who advocated for that? Real quick.
We had like a funny little thing, how networks do the little like greatest Americans of all time sort of listicles. We had one a few years ago in Canada done by the CBC, the National Broadcasting Corporation, and the greatest Canadian that was named was Tommy Douglas, who was the Premier of Saskatchewan who put in healthcare. So it is not. They are demonized in the moment, but it is 100% a legacy that people want to have. Like, remember when Romney ran against it? I always thought that was really funny because it's just reading history absolutely wrong. People love having not to worry about things.
All right. So now I wanted to ask that question because we have a current crop of candidates that are running on similar systems. For example, you have people like Alexander Ocasio-Cortez, Andrew Gillum in Florida. You also have Stacey Abrams in Georgia, Gina Ortiz-Jones running in Georgia, all running on very progressive platforms. So, Jordan, what's your take as somebody from the South? Can they win their general elections? Go.
Actual progressives might have a shot in some instances. Identity politics progressives, which are who we have these days, won't. No, because the identity politics thing, the reason it works so well for Trump, and it works so well, in progressives where it does, is because it works where the identity that you are promoting is the majority. So in a place like the South, where minorities are still minorities are minorities, and liberals are minorities, then playing identity politics is not going to reach across all those lines, and it's going to really mobilize the opposition because they're going to be terrified of you. So in the South, the progressives that we need, and again, I know we're limited on time here, but because of unintended consequences of some things, of political district redrawing that happened in the 80s and 90s to the benefit of the Black Caucus, which was a good thing, it basically made white liberals a voter base, white liberals in the South, I should say, a voter base with no representation. And I don't think that was their intent, but that's how it played out. But anyway, in the South, for progressives to work and win, we need policy wonk progressives. And typically what we see in the Democratic Party is that the moderates are the policy wonks and the progressives are the guys that kind of hit, talking points, which plays well if your base is bigger.
Jordan, out of time. Sorry about that. All right. So basically what you're saying is moderates are more, I guess, more of your policy guys. I don't necessarily agree with that, but we can address that in another show. So Dan, Jordan, just go ahead and unmute. You can do that and finish up your point, actually. No, you can't do that? All right. Okay. So I guess bottom line, Dan, I'm going to ask you a question about Blue Wave. Do you think it's going to happen? Do you think people will see progressive policy and be in favor of it?
I'd like them to redefine it. I would like them to think of long game. When Sanders ran, what I kept saying to everybody was, you have to think long game. That's what Republicans do. It's not a race. It's not a sprint. It is a long-distance marathon, and they have to think in big picture. And those progressive candidates have to move the bar to the left. And every one of those, I don't believe in identity politics. Politics is politics, but we have to see a larger coalition of people of color on the left who are doing the right thing.
All right. Okay, so that's it, guys. We're out of time. Thank you guys for joining me. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, home, for joining me, as I said, and taking a look behind the ballot. I'm Jeff Waldorf, and I will urge everyone to go to getvocal.com to jump into a conversation with each other to talk about this important issue, whether progressives can win in general elections, in the midterms, and begin to push policy. Thanks, guys. And remember to get vocal.